player will.
Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Willer. It is the Rikku character review with the brand new Final Fantasy X-2 character released last week. I had this review done a couple days ago, but wanted to stew on it just so I could get some comfort around her actual damage numbers, because obviously everyone knows she's an evade unit. I just wanted to see in practice how she works, and the answer is pretty darn good. And so today's character review, pretty standard topics that will cover: the character overview, the stat analysis, the report card. You've been here long enough by this point, you know what this entails, but kicking things off with the character overview, a brand new Earth unit added to the game with the Thief 10-2 unique main job with the Monk and Axe Knight subjobs as well. She does equip Ninja Blades, although for vision card purposes, Ninja Blade and Dagger are intertwined at this point. But in terms of physical equipments, it is the Ninja Blade that she can equip. She does also equip hats, cloths, and accessories with a move of 4 and jump of 2, so a highly mobile character. The cost of 100 at a 70 faith recommendation is an asterisk here. I'm going to go deeper in this though when I get to the limit break section though, where I can break down the status chance of proccing your Berserk on her limit break, which is really where this number comes into play the most with her. So look for that in the limit break section if you want to know more. Her max range is 5 squares away. She's got 2 AoEs and 2 single target abilities for some decent balance in terms of attack style versatility. The resistances, she does have 2 negative ones here, the negative 10% to pierce and the negative 5% to strike. Honestly, I'm not losing a lot of sleep over either of those. That's pretty consistent with a lot of current units. 25% to slash though is her highest, with the 15% to magic. Obviously both of those relatively meta damage types, and 0% to missile. Now her mastery ability, they did bump up her luck by 15%, which helps both her accuracy and evasion. They also gave her a permanent 25% unit res pen here, which is a really awesome part of her offensive upside. She's also got 10% unit resistance, certainly nice to see in this era of follow-up attacks, but she's also got some crit damage games here going on, where they've given her crit damage of 15% and crit evasion of 15%. So this is kind of both a way to maybe increase her damage or reduce the damage taken in a couple different scenarios. Now for the stat overview itself, base stat-wise, I'm actually pretty happy with where she ends up as an evade unit. Yes, the HP skews a little bit lower than what we're used to seeing, but as an evade unit, that's exactly what we were expecting. The attack stat, the dexterity, even the luck, her luck is exceptionally high here at that 204 base luck, which is perfect for her as an evade unit. When we look at the total stats in terms of where they add in the board nodes, the mastery abilities, things of that nature, that extra 15% luck equates to about 31 extra luck for her in total. So yeah, that's absolutely her strongest relative stat overall. But even the rest of them, the attack stat, the agility, the dex, I'm pretty happy, all things considered, with where she ends up. And when you talk about the agility in total, evade units typically want to be very fast because the agility is part of their evasion calculation. Rikku is decently fast, but I wouldn't call her very, very fast. She is like a tier below where some of the fastest characters end up in the game. Still well above average, but not the speed demon that I think some might have anticipated. The other stats overall, total critical hit rate, honestly ends up being in a really good spot. She's actually the highest innate critical evade rate unit in the game. That 140 ability really jacks up her crit avoidance rate, and with that high innate luck, she does end up being the best innate critical evade unit in the game, so she likely should not be taking many critical hits at all, if built properly. Now the accuracy, this is where things are kind of difficult, because as an evade unit, you're going to have a ton of luck on her, way more than your average unit most of the time. And so in practice, she will be decently accurate against the field. But if you're talking about her versus like stress testing mirror evade teams, her accuracy is actually kind of average. It's kind of whatever. She's got no passive to boost her accuracy at all either. And so again, this one is just going to be a constant moving target of where she ends up depending upon the matchup that you have, but we'll talk more about that in a different video that I'm going to do. Now the evasion with luck scaling equipped, she is the highest current evade unit in the game just based off that alone. And getting to the report card overall, again, I'm not going to necessarily go through all of this, but the real big takeaway is the effective HP, yes, it's a little bit lower because she's an evade unit, but she does have a one-time 40% physical and magic damage reduction, which allows her to not be easily one-shot, which is really important because the survivability for me is an A+. Not only does she have a 4-hit physical barrier, she's courage capable, she's got a 25% evade on her first buff, and an additional evasion buff that does stack on her second, where this is a type of an evasion that gives you an extra 20% chance to dodge if it's an AoE attack. that certainly ends up adding up. And she does have the Nullify Sure hit when she falls below 70% HP, which, yeah, she will be guaranteed hit for that first hit when she's got the physical and magic damage reduction for that one hit. But once you put her below 70, then she's got the Null Sure hit. So good luck hitting her after that, unless you're specifically gearing for the accuracy. Now, the damage for me is a B. Her Limit Break actually hits pretty hard, just given the slash res pen and the extra modifier on it, but overall her penetrations are adequate. You know, the 25% unit resistance penetration is really big. She's got 40% slash pen and defense pen on her passive, another 20% slash pen from her weapon, so she'll be at 60 most of the time. She'll get up to 90 with her limit break, so that, obviously for a one-time fight, very high amount of slash res pen. Her general passive that you'll have on is also just a straight up 15% damage increase for 3 hits, so she does start off the fight hitting a little bit harder than the end of the fight, and she does have Remove Protect and Remove Protect 2.0, as we call it, which is the buff of reducing physical damage percent. And finally, she's got the 15% unit imperil on hit, which, because of her unit res pen, you know, that imperil is nice, but relatively small in the broad scheme of the damage equation. Long story short, the damage is absolutely there. The agility there, I do think, is a B. She does end up being decently fast because she will have her agility passive on almost 100% of the time. Totally different character if you don't. The accuracy for me is a B. Again, functionally is an A, just because you're going to be blasting her with a ton of luck 100% of the time. But in an evade versus evade matchup, the B rating is going to stick out because you'll see her missing if you're not gearing for any kind of accuracy. That being said, her monk subjob does have a 100% hit, at least to throw in there just in case. Now, the evasion is an A+, best evade unit in the game. The weapon also gives an extra 15% for 3 hits and another 10% when she critically hits an enemy. Now, the movement for me is a B. That move 4 jump 2, really good, but also kind of bad because you can't alter that. A lot of evade units historically have had passives or buffs where they're able to adjust those so you can have some flexibility of just how much you want them to move. Riku's just kind of stuck with that, so she's always going to be 4 move and 2 jump. So that's good sometimes. Honestly, could be bad sometimes, though. Now, the auto ease of use is an A, very straightforward AI, not much build complexity because you're just going to be going for evade in every team that you have her in. It's really just that simple. Now, overall, team building might be kind of tough with the rainbow cards, but Mono Earth is very easy. Earth has always been a great evasion class. She fits in perfectly with that. And the game disruption for me is also an A. That evade percent really just can't be ignored. Not only is it incredibly difficult to hit, so you need to alter your team building, but it functionally eliminates the efficiency of a bunch of playable units at the moment, where if they're just innately not that accurate or they're too reliant on their guaranteed hits where she can nullify that sure hit, those units are going to suffer in the short term. So yeah, the game disruption on the math alone is an A. Now, the passives are a B. She's got a great 2 passives. Honestly, the rest, though, not a big fan of. The counter ability, it's okay. It's a very high chance to proc, but only versus slash and magic. The overall dropping kit, though, is an A. It's a very creative kit. Real great blend of utility and offense and team fight impact for a final grade of an A. And honestly, this could go even higher depending upon how much they want to put into the dagger class, which we're seeing with the new Winter Perrine unit and vision card. Dagger's on there too, so looks like Dagger's getting some love here. Excellent new unit overall. The team building is really what hampers her at the moment, which is why I think there's room to grow should they decide to add some things, vision cards, character overlaps, the new characters that come out. She's only going to get better. That team building shouldn't take away from the actual character evaluation itself. Now, my general thoughts, just to cover some of these things high level, the great team fight utility overall. She's got Courage Seal on hit, the 25% agility, and it's also evasion percent to allies. So not only does she give it to herself, but you can functionally make a teammate a lot more evasive than they would normally be innately as well. We got the Imperil on hit. Her Select 2 is a reduced counter chance of 100%. Actually very nice, and is a sequential ability that will give her Protect and 25 AoE rest to herself and teammate, and it also dispels enemy damage absorb buffs. So really nice blend of utility in that Select 2. She's also got some mitigation removal there with the Protect, Haste, and Protect 2.0 dispel on her level 120 ability, as we'll see, and there is some general dispel in there, but it is post damage, but it's there. You also can't ignore that. The slash penetrations, again, are adequate. You'll get 60 with the weapon. There are 3 dagger vision cards, though, that do have slash res pen, though, so it is nice. You have some accessibility to others. The limit break is 30%, but it is only one-time use, and it is technically dispellable. It can wear off, so while it's important to factor in the very first fight and the first hit, she's going to start the fight off stronger than she'll end the fight. The defense pen is just a little bit lacking. It's not awful. It's 50. 50 is the bare bone minimum that we expect nowadays. But honorable mention, there is some good crit damage upside though. And the AP management is okay. This is where I think you could get at her a little bit. She does have a 10% AP restore on a buff, but really nothing else in the kit. The ability cost from an AP perspective, they're not terribly expensive. But this might be an area where you could exploit Rikku a little bit, where if you can get at her AP kind of early, she actually could just hit like a wet noodle for a while. The limit break, too, is a great X factor, though, with the Berserk. Lots of fights will be won or lost with this limit break alone, so very important thing to look out for. And honestly, this is the biggest takeaway. We'll really hit peak when Venera and that vision card come out. You're going to hear that reiterated many times in not only this video, but the community at large. Now, should you pull? It's a maybe. It's, again, really simple. Did you pass on Yuna Jaden and instead plan on Rikku and maybe Venera? Obviously, then yes, go for Rikku. But really right now, we're kind of at this branch of roads where you clearly have 2 different kinds of teams coming into the fold that are very competitive, if not meta-defining with the rest of the field. If you don't have any intentions to get Venera in the future, your Rikku is just going to be confined to mono Earth, which is okay, but there are legitimate hard counters for that. So if you get Rikku, it's pretty recommended that you also go for Venera just for the extra team building flexibility. But there are other considerations too where, have you been keeping up with your Dagger and Ninja Blade vision cards? We'll look at that real quickly on the next slide. But also, do you have any intentions to reincarnate? And that totally depends on where you play. But one of the things that happens is with some of these units that have been out for a little bit longer, like Gilgamesh, like Shreka, like Sephiroth, people have put reincarnations into them over time at this point. And your Rikku, if you don't do that, your evade percent versus what they have for accuracy due to reincarnations is going to put Rikku at a slight disadvantage. So this is something where you should consider. But obviously, again, it depends on where you play. And then just back to that vision card eligibility, Dagger actually does have a lot of really great vision cards for the class itself. Maybe not necessarily for like Rainbow team building quite yet. It is getting there, but really just a question of have you been keeping up with some of these? Because there are a fair amount of them that were time limited. You look at a card like the Yuffie vision card, or even Fundamental Forces, the Starlight Element vision card that's running right now. That's not in the permanent pool. It only recurs once in a while. Even ones like Sildra or the Final Fantasy IX Zidane vision card. Those are limited cards, which are kind of important in some of the team building applications here. So something to consider too. Because if you don't, again, she's just going to be mostly confined to mono Earth, which is fine, but there is absolutely counterplay for. Now we'll get to the job overall here. This is where I actually genuinely like both of these passives. You're going to have these on 99% of the time. The rest of them, though, I'm not even thinking twice about it. I'm not a big fan of any of the others. You stick with these 2, and that's it. It's pretty simple. The counter abilities, you get that preemptive attack here. Very high chance, but only versus the slash and magic damage. We've seen these preemptive attacks work pretty decently before. I'm a fan of this. The main job buffs, that first teammate buff, again, it's the agility, it's the evade rate, it's courage for herself, it's the imperil on hit for unit resistance, and also the nullification of sure hit that when she falls below 70%, then it will activate. This is also where the AP restore is. So this very, very powerful first teammate buff. The second one, honestly, is 2, where that's the physical barrier, and it's the increased evasion versus area attacks. This also is the courage removal capability for her as well. So both of these buffs really important to make sure that she uses early on. The offensive abilities themselves, I actually like this a lot too. You have those 2 AoEs, 2 unit scaling, and even the AoEs are pretty different in that one of them is that cross shape, and although the other one is a big diamond, it's more of like an area around her that's the big diamond, so it's going to do some things for her movement where she's going to get into different positions than you're used to seeing other characters get to, so that she can adequately perform both of these. And this Pill for HP is actually a typeless attack that regardless of the slash resistance, this is just going to scale off the defense stat, it's going to scale off the earth resistance, and it's going to scale off what they have for area resistance. But the real special one here is the second ability here, the continuous attack. That's that select 2. A lot of utility on this one, not only for what it does on hit effects of the reduction of counter chance, but it procs a sequential ability, which is the AoE res and the protect, and Rikku is included in that, so she gets the benefits of both as well. Again, really awesome for her survivability as an evade unit. Now, just keeping things moving along here, the limit break. This is the select 2. It's the slash res pen of 30. It's a chance to inflict berserk. I'm not going to go through all these numbers, but I have 4 different charts here just to kind of get you all familiar with the range of the likelihood that this status effect will land. What you're seeing here on the left side is if your enemies have no berserk resistance. So you can see where my cursor is. This column here is the 0% no berserk resistance. The ones on the right here are as if someone has a Truststone passive for the 25% berserk resistance. And then alternatively, these top 2 charts are 50 faith enemies, and these bottom charts are 97 faith enemies. What I want to get to is basically the highest and the lowest that you can expect depending on a handful of these different scenarios. Now, at best, if your Rikku is 97 faith and the enemy is 97 faith and they have no berserk resistance, the highest chance of proccing is 78%. Alternatively, if your Rikku is 50 faith and your enemy is 50 faith and they also have berserk resistance, it's only a 15% chance to land. So it's never going to be guaranteed, but it's also never really going to be 0 based off the Truststone passives. And then you just have to consider the pros and cons of high and low faith as well. High faith also means that you take more magic damage, but high faith also means that you get healed for more from an external healer. So there really is no right answer on the faith. That's why I think 70 is a generally decent ballpark where you get the higher chance to inflict it. And yes, you might take more damage, but she's an evade unit. She shouldn't be taking a ton of damage anyway. I think the healing upside is honestly more impactful in that case. I might even entertain going as high as 97 myself, just because of how much a game changer this limit break is if you can get that berserk off. Now for the sub job, this one's not bad. It's got the Earthen Peril of 30%. It's a double hit. The Borrowed Time, not the worst one either. It's only a TP ability that has no modifier on it, so the only time she'll use this is if A, she runs out of AP, or B, if she isn't geared for accuracy at all and can't hit the enemies, she will actually use this at a 0% hit chance if she can't attack them normally. Well, this sub-job is fun to think about. I think I prefer the Monk sub-job just for the Surge Strike. It's one of those things that I just want to have that guaranteed hit, even though the enemy might be able to nullify Sure Hit if you're in a mirror matchup of Evade. Late in the fight, once that wears off, the fact that you can guarantee some damage no matter what, I think there's some value there. Personally, I'm just sticking with this and calling it a day. They do have the Axe Knight sub. Pros and cons to this one too. The Sleeper Sweep I like if you're going for a higher faith, where now you add in the sleep potential as another kind of status effect for her, but there's also already a lot of sleep resistance in the game at the moment. The Knight's a Remedy, not bad just for the self-sustain, particularly for like a second Guild War fight. It also helps where some of these ailments, like Immobilize and I think Paralyze too, make her evade rate fall to 0%. I need to check myself on that, but the ability to cleanse these can be very nice. Obviously, we see a lot of Blind as well, a lot of Frostbite as well. I don't love the sub job. I'm just going with the Monk, but these are probably the 2 abilities that I'm toggling on if I have the Axe Knight on. Now for the TMR review, this is one of my favorite TMRs that's come along in a while. Not only is it a really great 15 evade stat on the accessory, which I like to see that's an accessory, the 3 agility certainly is nice, but the TMR ability is really powerful in that it's the attack buff, the reaction block rate, and it's the chance to inflict blind on an enemy. This functions similarly to the Vega TMR or to the new Dario armor that can have a silence % chance to proc. This to me is great that you can put it on anybody and have a chance to inflict blind on the enemy if they're not guarding against it. Now wrapping things up here, this is where the vision cards for Dagger and Ninja Blade look amazing. They look really good. There's a lot of them, quite frankly. The only real problem is that, one, they're slightly lacking on the number of main slot vision cards that we look for, and even though they seemingly might have enough, there's not a ton of overlap with the different classes on those main slot vision card types. So this is a lot of good cards here, and that's why I say they can really only go up. If the game decides to throw in a couple more vision cards or a couple more meta characters that already align with what they have pre-existing, this could get a lot better. I think current day, Spear, Katana, and Mace are the 3 best at this time for Rainbow team building options, but there's certainly room to grow for that. But they seem to have kept Dagger in that grouping of weapon types for quite some time now. Now for the team building, again, Mono Earth is obviously a really great evasion angle. To me, I think it's a Spear, Katana, and Mace for the rest of the potential team building. Venera is definitely the next one to look to, but you'll notice there's a lot of vision card overlap here between those three classes that I was talking about. Not only is Trove of Knowledge the agility percent card on all three of these classes, but the Final Fantasy IX card overlaps, the Ramada Vision card that also has agility overlaps on it, the Greater Demons here a couple times, so there's some good pre-existing bones here. Now for the unique equipment, I do like her weapon the best, but I do think is it the Kurosami? What's it called? Murasame is also a good choice, but her weapon itself, a lot of evade stat on it. It's a 15% evasion rate for 3 hits, and she's also got, upon hit, an extra 10% when she critically hits someone. The Trial of Reckoning item for her, I'm sorry, quick edit here, I had the wrong box. It's Human Killer 20 and the 15% evade for against magical type attacks. So this is obviously a really great way to also bump up her evasion in another way against another type of damage type. And so overall, my general optimization is pretty straightforward. I think Steel Edge or Murasame are both equally good options. Winter Coat certainly has the highest evade, but could make a case for the Trials of Reckoning item with what it does for the extra evasion versus the magic type attacks. It's really going to come down to meta at that point, because her weapon, as we saw, does have some extra evasion in there too. I do think the Alex Ring is a decent option for when you have those mirror matchups of evade versus evade. Honestly, you might look at just dropping the weapon and using an Alex Ring and the Winter Coat and calling it there, but that's a little bit deeper for your average player. And then the Hermes sandals, I do think, are a great evade option no matter what. And the Espers, it's the same thing as it's always been. Dark Odin, Dark Ifrit, Tetrasulfid, and Demon Shimmer are the 4 evade-oriented Espers in the game. The 2 on the left are definitely my favorites. Tetrasulfid is a fun one because of the wind resistance that it has, so you can build up a little bit of wind resistance for Rikku so that she can at least survive a little bit versus wind enemies to proc that null sure hit. It's not amazing, but it's actually a nice option. And my top 3 favorite teams overall, obviously this top one here, that Mono Earth iteration with Sodali and King Mott, is very potent. Sodali himself carries so many fights, but this team has so much great intertwined team fight utility, different kinds of attack types, a very, very powerful team overall. The second one here, I think, is more the future of where Rikku wants to go, where you throw in Venera, you throw in a support. Obviously, Lucille looks really great, but theoretically, any support would work here. It's really just allowing them to do their job and keep them sustained while they do so. The third team here, Ramada is, again, tougher team building, probably my favorite at the moment, but we have seen some niche teams in JP where the new Thancred unit actually slots in well here, and that was more just a function of the meta, where because of how good Missile is, Thancred pairs well with these 2 units, because he does have some hate potential, and he can get very high for the missile resistance, so there is something there for like the meta game, but overall team building still requires a little bit to come out. And then finally, the Truststone Recommendations. This is the kind of unit that you're only going to have luck and you're only going to have agility. Those are the only 2 types that she needs. The left side, pretty standard for the HP, the luck, and the ailment resistances. The right side, I also think kind of straightforward. The attack 20%, the defense pen, I think are at minimum a must. The earth attack and slash attack, I also think are really nice for the extra modifiers. It's those last 2 here, the heal power and the reaction block. You have some wiggle room. I like these as just a general universal Truststone application. That heal power does help her where she's got her own damage absorbability. In the future, you're going to be running her with a support, I would imagine, a decent amount of the time. That heal power will help. The reaction block too, because she's a slash type unit, a lot of these counter abilities have very high proc chances versus slash type attacks. This reaction block rate helps, but it does kind of conflict with the select 2, which is a reduction of enemy counter chance 100%. So a little bit redundant. So while it's nice, not necessarily the best, I think you could absolutely slot in any one of the 3 on the right here, where we talked about the AP, not issues, but AP constraints that she has. Acquired AP 20% certainly wouldn't hurt, but neither would the dexterity or the crit rate, which is kind of what she's built to do also. So you have some flexibility, but I think these top 4 are at least very safe options for her. And that's the Rikku review overall. This is an exceptionally great character that's really only handcuffed by what's available in the game for her to be leveraged, but it's already showing that she's got some great upside against a handful of current teams, and is a really valuable character to build out the like rock, paper, scissors of what beats what in the game. But that's it for now. Good luck for those of you that are still attempting to pull. Those of you that are using her, I'm sure you're already seeing really great results, but that's it for now. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to you all soon.